This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Interview with a Lockpicker. Today's guest is RubberBanned. Say hello, RubberBanned.
Hello, everyone.
So, how and when did you get into lockpicking?
So my initial journey began roughly 10 years ago. I was looking for, a vocation as well as something to kind of build from a hobby. I had watched a couple of Deviant Olem videos, and I really
Okay.
thought like lockpicking seemed to be pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
I got my first lockpicks, and then after I got them, I started watching videos to kind of get a firmer handle on how to use them because I could rake open a wafer lock or two that I had bought, but I wanted to get more technical. Found channels like Bosnian Bill and Trackmaster 34 and Town, a lot of like what used to be like the really big names out there. And basically, I did what a lot of people try and do is I tried to monetize my hobby, and I figured the best way to do that would be to become a locksmith, and there I went. I started down that road, and yeah, so that's how I got into lock picking. Anyway, is and then locksmithing is just one kind of like led into the other.
So, can you elaborate on the whole getting into locksmithing a little bit? Because you mentioned when we spoke before about an apprenticeship.
Sure, yeah. So there's not really a lot of good documentation on how to get started in locksmithing. It's I feel like it's kind of still steeped in obscurity or security by obscurity, which is unfortunate. So what I did is I looked up how to be a locksmith in Oregon, which is where I'm based at, and basically there's like really only one path that you can like look into, and that's getting your certification, which just requires you to buy a book by Bill Phillips, which is, you know, a manual of locksmithing. It's a pretty comprehensive manual, and they're pretty good. I would recommend them for just like good reading if anybody's interested in locksmithing as a whole, because it's a good comprehensive resource. And basically, you just have to pass a sort of competency test related to terminology in the book. However, you can fail as many times as you want, and they'll just scramble the answers to the question. So if you just remember
Just keep going
which
back.
one, yeah, you could just keep going back. I was very studious because I was fronted the money by my grandparents to take this test. So I took the very studious part, and I actually memorized a lot of the stuff and took the practice test in the back of the book.
Wow.
So I didn't have to keep scrambling the answers, but some friends of mine who got the certification for fun were just like, yeah, I went into it, just paid the money, and I just made sure to pass everything within the time limit. So it turns out that it's not nearly as stringent as they would like to make it seem. So
Okay.
yeah, it was basically it was just I got my certification, and then I was like, well, this doesn't get me a clientele. It doesn't get me any money coming in. In fact, I'm a net negative because I paid for this test. So I got an apprenticeship with a shop that was willing to take me on. And basically, their thing is they said, you're going to be here 6 days a week. Everybody is. We work from 9 to 6 every day. And we expect you to get here before 9 because you need to prep the shop for open. So, and we're going to pay you $1,000 a month because we're
Oh
paying you
boy.
to learn. Yeah. Now, that's not to even about 10 years ago, that was not a lot of money.
No.
So um, I bit the bullet and I went with it. And even though they didn't pay me well, they gave me a lot of fringe benefits to kind of ease the transition into a very badly paying uh, job at the time. They lent me a car and they paid the insurance on it so I could drive it back and
That's
forth to
good.
work and not to take the bus. And it let me cart my kids around and a bunch of other stuff. So it was nice, and they did that essentially right away. So I wasn't on the bus for very long. Like my boss at the time, or the owner of the shop, went out and bought a car specifically for me to drive. And
That's
then,
cool.
I made great friends with the mechanic that I currently use. So there was a lot of fringe
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
However, fringe benefits do not put food on the table.
No.
So that was a struggle because I did that for about 3 years. And I think at the time of me leaving, I was making $2,200 a month.
Oof.
So, and that's 3.5 years later almost. And at that time, I was a fully fledged locksmith. I had done safe openings. I could do pretty much anything automotive at the time. I could rekey ignitions, pull all that stuff. I could do essentially anything that you needed me to do outside of, hang up a door closer. I was a shop technician, so I didn't really have a lot of field work under my belt.
Yep.
But still to be that well versed and making only $2,200 a month with no chance of any additional commission because you're in the shop, it wasn't great.
I have to imagine that being a locksmith, you've got some pretty interesting stories to tell.
Yeah, well, speaking of fringe benefits, you do collect quite a bit of stories. So I'll tell a couple of my favorites. One of them, I got called to remove a chastity device. However, that's not what they told me it was. They're like, it's in an intimate setting, and that can be anything from like handcuffs to like anything like that, a collar or something. But it was an active chastity device, and the unfortunate person that was wearing it had exceeded this device's capacity for size. So I'm like, I get to the door, and his partner or whatever relationship they had said, "Okay, I want to be honest with you. This is not handcuffs." Because I had a handcuff key in my pocket, like I'm ready to just pop open whatever generic thing they've got, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll just get it done and plug my nose or whatever I need to do." And she's like, "This is a chastity device, and he is currently wearing it." Now,
no!
at the time, I was like, "What's that?" Because I was very very sealed off from any intimate forays about 10 years ago. So
you were innocent
and she's
still.
like, well, yeah. So she was like, well, it's like a cage, but like like instead of a bird in it, it's his manhood. And he's like, oh. She's like, and the reason why we need it removed is because, and I'll never forget this till the day I die. She like cocked her head back towards the door to where like she could let her voice carry into the door. And she says, because he couldn't be good and control himself. And I was like, oh, I'm in the middle of this dynamic right now. I don't know if I like this. And I was like, okay. And she's like, are you comfortable with that? She's like, we will pay for this. And I was like, yes, you will. And I'm like, well, okay, we'll go throw like a cloth or something over to where just the lock is shown or whatever. And so we go in there, and there's a cloth over, and I see the lock, and it's like a Master 130D. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm thinking I've got to apply tension to this thing, right? And in order to do that, I got to get my hand around the lock. And what is the lock right next to but? So I'm like, well,
yeah.
and the guy is wearing like a full cowl, like it's a leather mask. Like it's very dungeon-esque in here. I'm very off-centered, but I realize like I can't use a bolt cutter.
I hope you got paid extra for this.
I did. So basically, what I did is I reached back into the old knowledge tanks. And I'm like, you know what? I think this 130D is probably unshielded. So I took my knife tool, and while pinching the lock and trying to avoid skin-to-skin contact, I just reached back and I pulled the pawl out of the way, and it sprung open. And I pulled the lock off and shuffle my way out of the room and go I'm like, I'm going to go grab my invoice book. And nope.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't want to do this anymore. So, yeah, they paid very well for that, as well as gave me some gift card to some restaurant in the local area. So, it all panned out, and I didn't have to spin around like doing wiggly tension and throwing a
Yeah.
Bogota in there trying to get this thing open on this guy's crotch. So, um, so that's my first favorite story to tell because it's by far the most awkward lockout that I've
Oh
had to deal
yeah.
with.
Not
I've
exactly. Not exactly the kind of thing you would hope it would be a chastity device on.
yeah, I mean, like, I'm like, well, because it's I'm totally appreciative of people getting their groove on, but like when you're not like it, when you're the observer, made unwilling participant,
Yeah.
they're just like, hey, you're you're gonna get in there and you're gonna know everything we were doing, but
Yeah.
we weren't gonna share this with anybody. So it was an experience all on its own.
Hmm. Well, God, I'm sure you could go on for a while with. So,
Oh
but
yeah,
but
I've got a top three for sure.
yeah, but I want to make sure we get a chance to go through some of the other things that I want to make sure we talk about. One of the things is you have an impressioning tool and you went through the process of testing and bringing it to market. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, right. So impressioning is kind of like my passion project as far as locksport's concerned. It's what I seem to be better at way more than lock picking. I feel like it's kind of underutilized, and as a locksmith, it tends to serve me better because once I make a key to something, I don't have to pick it again. So it kind of carries a longevity
Yep.
towards problem solving with me. And I think it's really just enjoyable. Like I can take breaks from it and come back and I'll be at the same progress point. So what happened is for years and years and years, I tried to get an impressioning tool made by Jordan Knapp over in Europe. He's well known over in that circuit. And I've been trying to get a hold of his tool for like 8 or 9 years now. Like that's kind of a running joke that because I couldn't buy his, I had to make my own. So what I did is I wanted to make a compact impressioning tool, one that could fit in a pit case and could be kind of like an everyday carry item. Impressioning tools as they sit are either costly, they're big, or they're unwieldy, or any combination of the three. So I wanted
Yeah.
to find something that kind of like hit the bullet points of none of those things. But I ended up landing like somewhere towards costly, unfortunately. But um, so what I ended up doing for a prototype is major manufacturing makes a staking tool for Masters up or universal pinning series of padlocks. And I basically just drilled and tapped through the side of that because I knew that it could hold on to a key because that's what it was designed to do. I knew that it fit my hand because I had one. And then I just basically got a longer screw to act as kind of a tensioning post and really just set to work. I clamped up a few keys and I impressioned about 100 locks before I kind of considered it a viable prototype. But I knew it was too small for most people's hands. So scaled it up a bit, reached out to Hazard or Not Sure. As anybody in the LP universe will know, he's my machinist. He was really great in working with me to kind of get that going. Did a trial run, had a bunch of early adopters. I had 10 made, and basically as soon as I announced them, they all sold, which was really cool. I've had really great feedback from everybody who's tried one. I've had I think about 160 of them made so far. I recently just essentially sold out again, outside of a couple floaters that I just keep around for people who emergency get into impressioning.
Okay.
And so, yeah, once I kind of verified that it worked, or at least worked for me, I brought it to market, and that was an enriching, an enlightening experience because
Yeah.
I learned that having stuff made is expensive.
Yeah.
Like, it's, having like a
Mass
custom
producing.
product,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be much more affordable if I could mass produce it. Like I could probably
Yeah.
greatly reduce the
The
cost per
price, yeah.
item.
Yep.
But like being a one person thing with no Kickstarter or anything, and just like a little bit of capital, I had to stir up this product, and it's been one of those true labors of love because I like it so much, and I'm like proud of the thing that came from my mind that became an
Yeah,
actual product.
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So one of the things you and I talked about is that we have in common is dealing with physical challenges that, with hand pain. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. So I have a kind of debilitating sort of chronic hand pain that's just a combination of being a martial artist for a lot of years and also not taking care of my hands when I first started impressioning, or not impressioning, but rather locksmithing. So I'd get in really awkward positions, didn't bother to like warm up my tendons or anything like that. And it kind of led to general stiffness. Tendonitis is something
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like
Yeah.
a prevalent symptom in that. So what I've started doing to kind of mitigate that is using selective tool sizes to kind of fit my hand better. And I do a lot of basically hand exercise rehabilitation of like gradual finger extensions. I have a light kettlebell that I use to kind
Okay.
of do fingertip curls and do those slowly. I make
Sure.
sure to do wrist rolls in the morning, and it's made lock sport very challenging because it increases the amount of hand fatigue that I feel, and it kind of puts my pain threshold like further in front of other people's. So when I'm competing, other people have a greater amount of stamina to kind of keep up at their pace, and where my hand will just kind of start to let go of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm not going to hold on to stuff anymore. You've you've had your limit, buddy.
You've exceeded my
So
limits.
yeah,
Yeah.
you did that thing that we talked about that you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
All right.
yeah, I've yeah, basically I've learned, please take care of your hands, everybody, because
Yes.
you they
Definitely.
really do take care of everything around you.
Yes, they do. I'll say that it's definitely been a challenge getting into lock sport, in specifically lock picking, with some of the challenges with arthritis and other issues with the hands when you depend on them so much for such finite movement and being able to feel everything. So yeah, definitely understand that very well. Um,
Right.
so wanted to get to another chance for you to share, because this will be the last question that we get into, but another chance to hear another one of your stories if you have another one to share.
Sure. So I've got one that kind of balances around where I did my job and somebody didn't want to pay. Um, so basically, this was an after hours call, and what happens is when somebody gets me out of bed to do an after hours call, I get a credit card up front, because if somebody like calls the other locksmith, or they get somebody like break a window and get out there. If I'm out of the house, I'm getting paid. So I give the quote for getting out of bed and getting to this guy's car. He's up on a mountain, so it's a little ways away. So it's like $175 or something, and I can tell they're a, a little on the drunker side. So it's like, okay, well, I'll get there, but if they're too drunk, I tend to call them an Uber and just get them home, give them their keys or whatever.
Yep.
So I roll out there, and mind you, he's already paid me, and I get to his car, I open it up, I hand him his keys, and he's kind of glaring at me, and he goes, "So how much was this again?" I was like, "It was 175," and he goes, "I'm not paying that." And he had like got his backpack out of the car and his skateboard, and I'm like, "All right, man. Well, the price is the price." And he goes, "I'm not paying that." And I'm like, I wonder, like, has this guy forgotten that I've
He already
already been
paid
paid?
you.
And I'm like, well, whatever you say, man. Like, there's your keys and stuff. And he like shoulder checks me, like pushes me in the chest, and I'm like, all right, well, this guy's clearly
Yeah.
not having a great night. So I'm like, all right, man, I'm gonna go. And he does it again. And he takes a skateboard that he's got out of his cart and he throws it at me like a dart, like a javelin, like a field javelin. And like a dart, it just like he's point blank, and it kind of like hits me like right between the eyes.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay, well, that was unpleasant. Like
Yeah.
he not a big person, so it didn't hurt all that much. It was just more jarring.
Yeah.
So he like threw everything down, and he throws everything down. That includes his keys, and like he like puffs up, and I'm like, okay. So just kind of back off. I pick his keys up because he like threw them all down like right in front of me for some weird reason. His skateboard starts rolling down the hill because we were up on a mountain, like I had mentioned. We're up on a hill, and he starts chasing after it. And I've got his keys, and I just kind of pick up his backpack, set it near his car, and everybody's gonna run over it because we're just like right off the road.
Shoulder,
and
yeah.
I lock the doors, and I throw his keys back in it, and I drive away after he chases off his skateboard. So I'm like, well, he already paid me. He assaulted me. I don't think he's safe to drive, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that probability of problems right there.
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
the next morning I got a call, and I'm like, oh, it's the same number. I wonder what this nice person has to say. And luckily for me, it was just him calling to apologize for being kind of a douche. And
Yeah.
he's like, hey, like,
Well, that's
I
good at
understand,
least.
like, you'd have no reason to come help me, but my keys are still locked in the car. We come unlock it. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, don't worry. Like, I'm fine. I'm not going to throw my skateboard at you or anything. So we got that all sorted out. He paid me again. Because it wasn't after hours, he paid my normal daily rate, which was far more affordable. And
Yeah.
luckily that one resolved itself. But it is a very novel thing to say that, one time somebody threw a skateboard at me like a dart. Not even like the normal way, just like a dart, like a javelin. So
who knew? Who knew
Yeah.
being a locksmith was going to put your life in jeopardy?
Yeah. New method of assault just dropped, everybody.
No kidding. You have been a blast to talk to and funny as hell. Thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed this interview.
Hey, likewise, thanks for having me on. It's always nice to kind of just talk about the history of how I got into it.
I might even need to have you back to tell some more stories. I'm sure people would love to laugh at some more of those.
Man, I have so many, so I would be 100% happy to give that to you.
We'll challenge our audience. Put it in the comments if you want to hear more stories of the locksmith on the go.
Yeah, the little locksmith.
The skateboard javelin avoiding locksmith.
Yep. So, tune in for more stories from the little locksmith that could. Happy to also field any questions for anybody. And,
all right.
And again, thanks for having me on.
Yep. So, thank you everybody for listening. For my subscribers, thank you. For anyone who hasn't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications, and turn on all so that you can be made aware of new content, new giveaways, as well as the drawings for those giveaways. And thank you for listening. Take care.
Yeah, like, comment, and subscribe.